Today, we're plunging into, well, one of history's most pivotal and frankly tragic stories, World War I, often called the war to end all wars. This isn't just going to be about dates and battles. Our deep dive, looking at the sources you shared, is really focused on uncovering the human side of it all. We want to extract those crucial nuggets of insight, the things that help us understand not just what happened, but why it mattered and why it, still resonates today. So to really get into this, we need to set the stage. Imagine Europe, early 1900s. Our sources paint this vivid picture. It's a powder keg, isn't it? That's the classic description. Just overflowing with imperial rivalries, tensions, especially in the Balkans, and this massive arms race, creating an atmosphere just perpetually on the brink. We're talking about these huge empires, Germany, Austria, Hungary, Russia, Britain, France, all locked in this relentless race for power, building up huge armies, making secret deals behind closed doors, the Triple Entente, the Triple Alliance, and fiercely battling for colonies, for national pride across the globe.
You get this sense, this heavy feeling that something big was coming. It sounds like Europe was just holding its breath. From the sources, what was the sort of immediate danger there? What made it so ready to explode?
Yeah, it's striking how the sources really highlight it wasn't just general tension. A key thing was these rigid military plans, like Germany's Schlieffen Plan. They required super rapid mobilization, preemptive strikes even, to work properly. And you combine that with this tangled web of secret alliances. Well, it made backing down almost impossible once something kicked off. Plus, there was this pervasive belief among a lot of leaders that a short, sharp war was inevitable, maybe even, good for national pride.
A short, decisive war. How wrong they were. And then, the Stark. That single spark, most of us know the basics. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife Sophie. Sarajevo, June 28, 1914. A young man, Gavrilo Princip, part of a secret Serbian group, fires the pistol. But the sources really dig into why this specific event there then became the trigger, the inescapable trigger for a global disaster. How did it spiral so fast?
Well, what the material really emphasizes isn't just the shooting itself, but how quickly the major powers found themselves trapped. Trapped by those exact commitments and military timetables we just mentioned, even if some hesitated at first. Austria-Hungary immediately blamed Serbia, right, where Princip was from. And when Serbia didn't meet Austria's really harsh demands, war was declared, just like that. And then, boom, the dominoes fell, and incredibly quickly. Russia sees itself as Serbia's protector, starts getting ready for battle, mobilizing. Germany, Austria's ally, sees Russia mobilizing and declares war on Russia. Then almost instantly, Germany declares war on France, Russia's ally. And the final piece, really, for Britain, Germany invades neutral Belgium to get to France fast. That invasion just infuriated Britain, made them absolutely furious that they declared war on Germany. And astonishingly, in just 1 week, pretty much all of Europe was engulfed in war.
Wow. Just 1 week. That cascading effect is terrifying. Was there any point where someone could have hit the brakes? Any diplomatic off-ramp missed?
The sources suggest, there are some attempts at mediation, but the sheer speed of military mobilization, plus every nation's fear of looking weak or losing some strategic advantage, it just squeezed the space for diplomacy right out. Once those mobilization orders went out, the military schedules kind of took over. It pushed leaders towards war almost automatically. It wasn't just bad decisions, it was systemic pressure.
And it wasn't just Europe for long, was it? The scale quickly became global. That's why we call it a world war. Soon you had countries from Africa, Asia, the Americas being drawn in. On one side, the Allies, Britain, France, Russia, later Italy, and crucially, the United States joined them. On the other, the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, Bulgaria, and the fighting. It happened everywhere. The mud of France, the Western Front we all picture, but also the deserts of the Middle East, the icy plains of Eastern Europe. Even the skies and seas became battlegrounds. How did that global reach change things?
Well, the sources really stress that global reach meant unprecedented resource mobilization, drawing troops and raw materials from colonial empires, turning it into a total war where entire societies were geared for the conflict. And as it settled into that brutal rhythm, especially on the Western Front, life for the soldiers became horrific. Our sources describe the trenches bluntly. It was hell on earth. Soldiers living for months in these cold, wet, muddy tunnels, rats everywhere, facing hunger, disease, and sudden death at any moment, and charging out into no man's land, that terrifying space between the trenches, choked with barbed wire, landmines, swept constantly by machine gun fire. Just hell.
It's hard to even imagine that kind of existence. Does anything stand out from soldier accounts in the sources beyond the physical horror?
Yeah, something often overlooked, which the sources bring out, is the constant psychological strain. The relentless shelling, seeing friends die, The sheer monotony, broken only by moments of absolute terror, it led to huge rates of shell shock, what we now call PTSD, right? Soldiers weren't just fighting enemies anymore. They felt like cogs in this huge, dehumanizing machine.
A killing machine. And that hell on earth was made even worse by a whole new kind of warfare. This war saw weapons that just revolutionized combat, making it deadlier than anything before. Can you walk us through those, how they changed the battlefield?
Absolutely. And the sources show it wasn't just the weapons themselves, but how they totally upended tactics. Machine guns, for instance. They turned traditional infantry charges into suicide missions. That's a big reason for the trench stalemate you mentioned.
Right.
Then you get truly horrific things like poison gas, choking, blinding men in the trenches, leading to gas masks, a new kind of terror. Later, tanks arrive. Clunky at first, but they hinted at a way to maybe break through the lines. Airplanes started with reconnaissance, looking over the lines, but quickly evolved into dogfights, bombing. Aerial combat was born. And submarines, U-boats, they took the war under the sea, hitting supply ships, trying to starve Britain out. It was unprecedented. Technology really industrialized killing in this war, pushed the boundaries of what was considered acceptable.
So amidst all this global slaughter and technological terror, our sources point to some key moments that really shifted the balance, didn't they? What were those major turning points?
Definitely. 1917 was a huge year. Two massive shifts. First, in Russia, while the war's still raging, the Russian people starving, angry, they'd just had enough. They rose up, overthrew the Tsar, and Russia pulls out of the war completely.
Which must have been a huge relief for Germany.
It was initially. It freed up German troops from the Eastern Front to focus on the West. But almost at the same time, a new giant enters the ring, the United States. German submarines had been sinking American ships. That was building pressure. But the final straw was the Zimmermann telegram. This secret message gets intercepted. Germany trying to entice Mexico into attacking the U.S. if America joined the war, promising them lost territory like Texas, Arizona.
Wow.
Yeah. When that came out, America had had enough. They declared war on Germany, joining the Allies, and they brought fresh troops, huge amounts of supplies, and just this massive surge of strength that counteracted Russia leaving and then some.
So this deep dive towards its close, what does it all mean? By 1918, the tide had well and truly turned. Germany was collapsing. Sources describe people starving at home, the army exhausted, revolution spreading there too. The Allies pushed hard from the West, and finally, Germany had no choice. They asked for peace. And so, that famous moment, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, November 1918, the guns fell silent.
But connecting this to the bigger picture, that silence didn't automatically mean lasting peace. Not by a long shot. Leaders met in Versailles, France in 1919 to sort out the future. And the result was the Treaty of Versailles, often called the peace that didn't bring peace. And it was incredibly harsh on Germany. They were formally blamed for the entire war, the War Guilt Clause, forced to pay billions in reparations, crippling amounts. They lost huge chunks of land, all their colonies, most of their army was dismantled, lost pride. Germany felt utterly humiliated.
And our sources definitely point to that treaty, that humiliation, as a major cause, maybe the major cause of World War II later on. But were people saying that at the time? Were there dissenting voices warning about this?
Oh, absolutely. There were figures like John Maynard Keynes, the famous British economist. He was there. He argued very strongly against it, said the punitive terms would wreck Germany's economy, destabilize Europe, and just breed resentment for the future. He predicted trouble. He thought the reparations were impossible to pay and the humiliation would just fester. Our sources show that while some, like Keynes, pushed for a more forward-looking, maybe more conciliatory peace to actually prevent future wars, the main feeling among the victors, France especially, was make Germany pay. Understandable, maybe, given the devastation, but it planted those seeds of anger, as you said, seeds that definitely grew into World War II.
And the human cost. When the sources lay it out, it's just staggering. Can you give us a sense of that scale, the lives lost, the lives changed forever?
It's almost impossible to truly grasp the numbers, but the statistics are just grim. About 16 million people died in total. Roughly 10 million soldiers, maybe 6 million civilians, and over 20 million more were wounded. Many with injuries, physical and psychological, that they carried for the rest of their lives. Lifelong scars. Whole cities, towns across Europe just obliterated, wiped off the map, and politically, 4 massive empires just vanished. Austria-Hungary, gone. The Ottoman Empire, gone. The Russian Empire, transformed by revolution. Even the German Empire is finished. A whole generation was scarred, if not lost. The demographic impact, the social impact, it rippled for decades. And why it still matters so much today? Well, World War I fundamentally changed everything. It really did. Maps were completely redrawn, new countries emerged, old powers disappeared. It's such a powerful reminder of how a single event, even a single shot like the one in Sarajevo, can change the course of history, not just for nations, but for millions of individuals. And it hammers home the dangers, doesn't it? The dangers, extreme nationalism, of unchecked power, of military plans taking precedence over diplomacy. And what happens when humanity gets forgotten in these big geopolitical games?
Exactly. And that's the striking thing, isn't it? The irony. It was called the war to end all wars. Yet, as we've discussed, the peace it brought was so flawed, so fragile, it didn't last. It really makes you think, doesn't it? How these historical grievances, these unresolved conflicts and resentments, how they can just echo down through the generations, shaping the future in ways no one expects, often devastatingly, long after those guns first fell silent, something to really mull over.